I'm Shain, a New York Jewish mom who had the audacity in 1993 to continue a geriatric pregnancy and give birth at the age of 46.
And I'm Sarah, the result of that pregnancy. 32 years later, I'm currently a practicing therapist. Though Shain is often thought to be my grandmother, she's still my mom, and this is Listen to My Mother,
a podcast where we answer your real-life questions with 2 points of view, one rooted in motherly instinct,
and one rooted in clinical training.
You'll get guidance, support, maybe a little tough love, but always from the heart.
And if you'd like us to answer your question on air, head to the link in our show notes and send it our way. We want to hear any questions you have.
And now it's time to
Listen to My Mother.
Hello, darling. It's interesting that I can see you. We can see each other when we record, but anybody who listens to this is not going to be able to see us, which I'm very happy about because we both look very tired all the time. So since we're tired and we don't have a lot of energy, and I know you have somewhere else you need to be in a little while, did you get the thing you were hoping you would get delivered to you? Did that come on time?
It did. I do. I have it in my living room, but we'll see if we still have time for that. There was a different topic that I wanted to discuss today because we lack submissions. So hint to any listeners, I don't care if it's not a real problem. Send us a problem that your friend told you about. It's all anonymous. We just need something to talk about.
Well, actually, we have plenty to talk about. So I am thinking about changing the concept of our podcasts to not an advice podcast, unless, of course, you send in a submission. We'll be happy to give you the advice you really don't want. But that we just talk about stuff that interests us and that we think is valuable for us to speak about together. Submission comes, great. Submission doesn't come, we always have plenty to talk about.
That's true. And also, we should maybe mention that we have changed the format of our timeline. We were originally every other Tuesday, and now, just because our lives are busy and we maybe bit off more than we could chew, we're switching to the last Tuesday of every month for publishing.
And that works for me. I am wearing 5 different hats at least on a weekly basis. And I'm no spring chicken. I need all my resources to deal with my life as you do with yours. But this is fun. I've been enjoying this very much. So what is it that you wanted to hit me with today and give me a hard time about?
Not giving you a hard time. I'm just curious what your experience has been on this topic. So let me just give a little context. Let me back up. This is a conversation I had with friends last week at book club. There's only 4 of us, and we spend 2 hours talking about our lives and then an hour talking about the book, if that, maybe 30 minutes.
Are you reading worthwhile books that you can only spend half an hour talking about them?
The books are always usually very good and thought-provoking, and we have good conversation about it. This time we read All Fours by Miranda July, and then one other person in the book club had recommended a book just to me that I had just finished right before our book club called Good Material by Dolly Alderton. So we had All Fours, which all 4 of us read. That's funny. And Good Material, which only me and one other person had read. They both sort of prompted this conversation because all 4 of us are unmarried. 2 of us are single. 2 are in long-term relationships. And no one has children. And it kind of prompted this conversation about, like, do we want kids? What does it look like if we have kids? And, like, we're all kind of in different places with that. And it was brought on because in both of these books, there was this element of, so in, like, Good Material, this is going to be a spoiler, so just skip ahead if you don't want the spoiler. There is this character who has these older women in her life telling her, if you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. All these people who are mothers seem to be very happy to be mothers and they love their children, but they say to her, there are times I wish I did not have my kids. There are times that I wonder what I gave up, what I sacrificed to have my kids, and what my life would be like if I had not done what was wanted of me, which was to have kids. Which I think is a thing that a lot of women think about, because there is, like, this societal expectation. I mean, women are the ones who do it. Well, biologically female people are the ones who have the babies. So there is kind of this expectation like, well, the species doesn't survive unless you do it. And in this book, and then in all fours also, she like seems to be a very good mom, maybe like an overly enmeshed mom, but she loves her kid. But we talked about it that like it seems like being a mom is such a small part of who she is and her identity. It brought up this conversation of kind of like we theoretically want kids, some of us don't, but also don't see how the trajectory we are on now, the life path we are on, the things we want, the things are that are our goals, goes in the direction of the theoretical future that we see. When I think of myself in 5 years, 10 years, there are children in those fantasies. But when I look at my actual life and the actual things I'm working towards and the actual things I want, there's no kids in the near future. So theoretically, sure, but also maybe not. And also, there's this other aspect of it too. It's like, I don't even really feel like I have space in my life for a partner who is an autonomous person, let alone a child who is entirely dependent on me. Like, I like my life and I want to be the center of it. And I don't know that that creates space. That doesn't really create space for being able to have kids. But what I wanted to ask you first and foremost was what was coming up in this one book where like the grandmother who was always seen as this like wonderful family person and doting mother and grandmother and loved her husband, who like says like, I kind of wish I had just traveled the world instead. So I'm curious if you ever think about that of like, did you have kids because you wanted to or because it was expected of you or both or neither? Or do you think at all about what your life could have been if you chose not to have children?
I've said it before that your brother and your sister were part of a plan that was just what I was supposed to do.
Mm.
I was supposed to come to a certain age, get married, and have children. So I followed the plan as the middle child who was not valued or seen as worthy. It was my goal to have my parents value me. And to do that, I followed the path as best I could for what their expectation was of their children, though my brother and my sister did not and still remained the valued children. And,
Well, real quick, I want to just say, like, that's making me think of something. Earlier today, I did an interview for a local Jewish organization to talk about third generation Holocaust survivor group that I'm a founding member of. And part of the interview was like, I was talking about, like, how the Holocaust survivor grandmother was a parent and how that affected how you parented. And one of the things that I said was like, your brother was a miracle because they didn't think she could get pregnant. So he was valued because of that. And your sister was the American dream in a person because they had her when they got here. And you were an inconvenience. The way they saw each of you from birth directly impacted your relationships, all three of your relationships with your parents, your entire lives.
I mean, there was more reasons why my brother and my sister were valued. There was more than just the American dream and the miracle child, though that did exist. My mother made it very clear to me at some point in my life that she tried to abort me because I was an inconvenience. Well, that's a wonderful thing for a child to know, which, okay. But we moved on from there. So just going back to your original thing. So, yes, Amara and David, your brother and sister, were part of the plan. They were
Mm-hmm.
supposed to happen. I remember the thermometer under my tongue for when I was ovulating. So your father, this whole thing to have that baby. And then we went through it again after Mara was born for David, had to have those children. Then we went through a whole marriage for years, decades. And I found when I was 45 years old that I was pregnant. Not with you.
Mm-hmm.
I was pregnant. This was not in the plan. And I know I've said this before. This pregnancy, this child was for me a gift. I never got gifts. Nobody gifted me for real. It was always something that was given to me for somebody else's reason. It wasn't really about me. But this pregnancy was a gift. I didn't have to work for it. I didn't have to plan for it. I didn't have to make it happen. It was just handed to me. And then I miscarried. That was devastating, not just because miscarriages are devastating. Anybody who's lived through one, it's a tremendous loss. For some, it may be a relief, but it's still a loss. Then I found myself pregnant again, and it was you this time. But now I was frightened because if I could lose the other one, I could lose this one. There was no guarantees. I had never miscarried before I had that miscarriage. So I was frightened a lot during the pregnancy with you. People kept telling me to get rid of it. I was 45 years old. I was going to be 46 by the time you were born. And people all around me were telling me, what are you, crazy? You're going to start over? You already gave away all the baby stuff. We didn't even have anything in the house. It wasn't.
Well, you gave away the baby stuff 20 years ago.
But there was no way I was not going to have this child. There was no way. I felt the same as if it was a gift, but it had a different flavor to it because of the fear of loss of another pregnancy. So many people telling me, why do you need this in your life now? And my thought was, what else am I doing that's so important? What are the other women around me doing? They're going to museums. They're going out to lunch. They're going to the theater. Really? This is what you want to fill your life with and say you've had an important and successful and a life where you gave something to somebody else? I was raised in a home where service was really part of the DNA. And for those years, it wasn't about service when you were little, but it was service to another, which was you, my baby. And people were saying, you're stuck, you're here, you're stuck. What would I be doing? Going out to lunch? You went to see a museum? Great. I'll pass on the museum. I'm playing with my kid. I felt like the most important thing that I did, chosen by me, was to have you. That was, everybody was on my case to end that pregnancy. But you became, unfortunately for my other two children, but you became a real focus in my life at a time when they were off doing their own lives. If that answers your question, I knew I would always have children. But at this point in my life, having 3 children and 3 grandchildren, there are moments.
And 2 grandpuppies. Don't forget them. They might be the only grandchildren you get from me, depending on how this conversation goes.
Oh, is it all based on the conversation? All right. But I have said this in my later years, now that I have grown children and grandchildren and grandpuppies, every once in a while the thought is, whose idea was it to have children? Really? Who thought this was smart? But for nothing would I give up what was brought into my life. Now, could I have done it better? Absolutely. Did I know how to do it better? No.
Well, we've also talked about that before. Like, no one ever knows what they're doing. I wonder, though, like, that, like, half answers my question. But, like, I think the real question is, you know, you said you knew you would always have children. And you are grateful that you did. But do you ever wish that you didn't?
Not really. No. What I wish was that I had support from my parents. Different kind of support from my father, a very different kind of support from my mother. Had I had that and been given license, I wasn't allowed, and I wasn't strong enough to fight the forces of society. Had I been allowed to pursue a career I wanted, which I never got to do, so I never lost something I had. I never had to give anything up except an idea.
What idea did you have to give up?
I wanted to go into my father's construction business. I knew I would be good at it. To this day, I'm very good at doing that. I designed space, I've designed kitchens for friends, I've designed 3 houses that were renovated, and I love them. I think I've done a great job. This was something I really felt
Mm.
I had a gift and a talent for, and a desire and an ability. And I told my father I wanted to come when I graduated from college. I want to come into the business, and he said, absolutely not. It's for your brother, not for you. I said, my brother doesn't want it and he's not good at it and he can't do this. This is not in his nature. And my father said, no, 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 it's got to be for him. So I became a teacher, which was what I was allowed to become. And he went into the business and he screwed up royally, and he ended up literally running away from home when he moved to Israel. Um, it was someplace they would let him go. They could take kind of sort of pride in him going to Israel, but that was it. He never could make a success of anything that involved business. And it's something I can do, and was never allowed to. So the point is, I didn't have to give it up. I never had it.
Right. I never knew that you wanted to do that. I mean, I obviously know that you're very good at it. You're going to design my kitchen. But I mean, this is like a running joke forever. You're an unpaid professional kitchen designer because you've done it for so many people who love their kitchens. The way that you think about it, a lot of contractors don't consider functionality of so many things that just immediately click and make so much sense for you. But I never knew that you had that conversation with Saba. I think, even though, like, when I think about it now, logically, I know that you didn't want to be a teacher. I think on some level, I, like, just assumed you wanted to be a teacher.
No, I did not. I did not want to have anything to do with kids. I really don't like kids unless they're mine. I like my kids. But that's what happened when I was teaching. Kids in my class, once you became mine, I became a mother bear. It
Mm-hmm.
was, you're my kids. It's very different. But kids in general, as a whole, no, I have no use for them.
I feel the same way. I don't particularly like kids. I refuse to work with kids in my job. I've been out with friends where a kid will come up because they want to show us their little dinosaur doll, and my friends will be like, wow, like my uterus is begging for something to be in there. And I'm like, that literally did nothing for me. I like kind of just wish that kid would go away. They're like, it's so cute. I just could scream. What a little cutie. I'm like, I hated every second of that. And I really wish that kid would stop talking to me.
But remember how you were with your nephew.
Which nephew?
How many nephews do you have?
There's two, so which one?
Right. Well, I think with both, but I think especially with Jay, you just ogled and oogled all over that kid. You had a special relationship with him when he was little. You don't remember it?
I don't remember that.
Your little Thor?
Well, I remember calling him Thor, but I don't remember having that relationship with him as when he was a baby. I mean, like now I say that he's my favorite person on the planet.
Okay, well, all right. In that case, all right, we'll live with that.
But I actually don't know that I felt that immediate connection to him when he was born. I actually think I felt kind of resentful towards him when he was born because he was Mara's baby, which meant I was no longer Mara's baby. He took my spot. I don't remember feeling that immediately. As I got older and processed how absurd that was, I remember like during COVID, I was going through withdrawal from a med. And I was just, and I mean, COVID in general, like mental health wasn't great. And like I was in such a terrible headspace. And I was like, literally the only person that I want near me today is Jay. No one else can talk to me, but he can come talk to me.
Okay. But the bottom line is, I would not give up having had my kids for anything. And it's not just because I'm a mother and I love my children. When our children grow up and we're fired, it's very hard to let go and do that transition where you completely allow your children to be their own adult. And that's a hard transition because this is your life. This is what you do. And you're learning the whole time. You're learning how to be a parent because it keeps changing. With every developmental change of your child, you have to learn a whole new manual. And it's written in Chinese.
It's interesting that you use the word fired, because I don't know that there is, well, I can't speak to that. I'm sure there are plenty of people who feel this way, but like, I can't imagine ever feeling like I don't need you. This is something I think about a lot because Mara and David are in their 50s. By the time you die, they'll probably be ideally in their 80s because you're going to live until 110.
Oh, we'll outdo Moses.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Moses was like
120.
I thought it was 600.
No, 120.
Like oh, no.
Maybe Moses was 600.
Albus Dumbledore was 600, so there's that. But someone was 600. Someone biblical. I think about this a lot, though. Mara and David will have you through their kids' entire, like, through the entire time that they are hands-on parenting with their kids in the home with them. Until they're, quote-unquote, fired. You will be available to them as a resource for that entire time of their parenting. I will not have that unless I have kids today.
No, but you will have Mara and David.
I know, but I don't like their perspectives as much as yours.
Well, they don't really turn to us for parenting advice all that often. It happens once in a while, but it's not all that often because we didn't parent them so great.
Yeah.
We didn't. I think we did a much better job with you, but you were the second chance, you know?
Yeah. And that's something I think about, though, too. I mean, there's a chance that, like, David's kids are going to have kids before I have kids. Like, his son is in a more serious relationship at 17 years old than I don't think I've ever been in. They could have kids before I have kids. The timeline that I'm on, who knows? The difference also is, like, you as my parent are there for me as your child, which is different from my sibling as a parent being there for me as their sibling with parenting advice. Because they're going to be there for their kids. And that's, like, where that maternal or paternal instinct comes in, is to guide their children, but not to guide me.
Well, I think actually you're quite right, because regardless of the age difference and regardless of, how much they love you and care about you and have watched you grow up, there is still a level on whether it's, tiny little waves or big waves of a sibling rivalry. Mm-hmm. So there is not that totally unconditional love you hope to get from a parent. There's always a little bit of a jolt in there that comes along with looking to a sibling for, you're not going to get the same thing from a brother or sister that you're going to get from a parent. It might be better, it might be worse, but it won't be the same.
There's also, I guess my concern would be, like, when I go to you or Dad for things, the way you receive it is like, of course, who else are you going to go to? But when I go to Mara or David for things, I don't know that I have felt this way, probably, but I know that, like, I most likely will feel this way, that, like, there is, in their minds, like, well, you're an adult, figure it out.
Shouldn't we be doing that with you?
But I think it's different because, like, for instance, when I bought my house, I had never done that before. I needed to be calling you 4 times a day to be like, how do I do this? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? And it's like, Mara did the same thing when she bought her house. Assuming was it not that way?
Am I supposed to remember that?
Right. But, like, say, I'm assuming same thing with David, that, like, it's who else do you go to for things like that, even as an adult, but your parents? But, like, I feel like going to Mara and David for questions like that I wouldn't get such an attentive response.
I think you're probably right. But there are plenty of situations where parents will say as well, figure it out.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've said to Dad, because Dad is the ultimate fixer, no matter what's going on, where I've said to him, leave them alone, they'll figure it out.
Well, I mean, yes, and there's times also that I'm just like, okay, back off, I'm an adult, I can do this on my own. For sure, that does exist. But I think it's like I think that an important side note to this is that we are very privileged in our family dynamic.
Hmm.
We're very lucky that we like each other and that we support each other and that we have each other to call for advice. And so we can really only talk about what exists in our family. But I think that there are things that I no longer need my parents for, that I kind of wish my parents would not help with. Do you think that there will always be things that I will need my parents for? And, for some reason, the thought that keeps coming into my head is because I think I had this thought very, very young. I mean, I'm sure you remember when I was like 5, 6, 7 and going to school and you'd brush my hair in the morning and rip out all my hair and it made me cry. It was so painful. Do you remember all this?
I remember my mother doing that to me.
You don't remember that? I would sit at the counter in the kitchen and I'd have to have a book or like the back of a cereal box. Like I needed something to be reading to distract me while you were brushing my hair because it was so tangled and knotted and it was so painful. And we got like so many different types of hairbrushes and we got like that wooden brush that ended up being like the best of all the brushes and it was the best for tangled, whatever. We went through so many iterations of you brushing my hair, figuring out how to brush my hair because it was so tangled. And I complained and I hated it and it was like a whole thing. But I must have had this thought so young because every time I think about the concept of like, what do I do when you're not here anymore? The image that is associated with that question is that wooden hairbrush. Because I must have, at 7 years old, thought like, who's going to brush my hair if my mom dies? And it has been a question on my mind for 25 years.
I think you were, at a very young age, very affected by the fact that you had older parents. I think that's always played in your head, that we're going to die before you're ready.
Right, and like obviously no one's ever actually ready for their parents to die, but it is something that I do think about a lot. Is like Mara and David are going to have you for way more milestones. I won't.
Yes, but I've been with you for milestones they never had.
Right, that's true. But it also like this, just to kind of circle back to where we started, I don't want to be an old parent. Another concern that I have is you have relationships with Mara and David's kids. You know who they are as their own people. And if I wait much longer, you're not going to know anything beyond this is a baby. Like, you're not going to know their personalities. You're not going to know what they're interested in. You're not going to know who these people are. And more importantly than that, like, they're not going to know who you are. They aren't going to have that relationship. And I don't want to do to my potential future kids what that does to me. Like, I don't want them to be in the position where now they're worrying that I won't have a relationship with their kids. This is all assuming that there's still a world in 40 years, which is another piece of the question of do I even want to have kids?
I don't think this is a concern normal people have.
Which part of that?
The part about will my children know my parents and will my I mean, you can think about it for 5 minutes and then let it go. Look, I never had grandparents, so I didn't know. Again, I didn't have them, so I didn't lose them. I didn't understand what grandparents were supposed to do for you, what role they had.
But that's not what I mean. Like, I don't know that it's a loss for my kids. It's a loss for me that my kids won't have that relationship with you. They won't know what they've lost or haven't lost. I will know because I know what your relationship is like with the grandkids you already have. That is a heartbreaking thing for me, that whatever potential future kids I have most likely will not have that relationship. But I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few months. I went through the whole process of having my eggs frozen because I was like, someday I'll want kids, but I don't know that I will. Because
but that's the point. You don't know. You have no idea. Did I know I was going to have you? The curveball thrown. You have no idea. The one thing I do know is you're not going to accidentally get pregnant.
Right. Well,
this I know.
Well, that
this
can't.
I know.
I have no fallopian tube, so that can't happen.
No. And that you had your eggs frozen, so there's potential children. But what you don't know is whether or not you're going to fall in love with a man who has 2 beautiful children and you're going to end up adopting them and you will have children. I have no idea what's coming in your life, and you have no idea what's coming. There's no way to know as you step forward, one foot in front of the other, which direction you're going in and who's going to come into your life.
Sure, all of that is true. What I mean when I say I don't know if I'll want children is almost kind of like an identity crisis, because I've always known that I'd want children. Even though I knew I didn't want to be pregnant, I always knew I want to raise kids. I want to be a mom. And now, in the past few months, I've been thinking about, do I want to be a mom? Because when I think about my future, I have a perfectly manicured lawn, and I have a barbecue, and kids are running around, and I like do all of that stuff, and I have this like a very idealized image in my head of my future with children. And when I think of my future, that is what I see. But when I realistically look at where my life is now and the path that I am on and the things that I am working towards, that path is not going into the direction of that fantasy.
How do you know that? Really? What path are you so rigid on that there's not, a family in your future?
I don't have time for anything.
But you will.
No, but this
You're
is
first building a practice.
Half the things I'm doing are not work related. I would have to give up my entire lifestyle to be able to have kids.
Not your entire lifestyle, just a little bit of it.
Most of it. I wouldn't be able to travel every weekend. I wouldn't. Oh, you had said, I wrote this down because I thought this was so interesting when you said this, was like, when you got pregnant with me and everyone was telling you, like, you really want to do this, have this as part of your life now, and you're like, what else am I doing? And everyone's like, go to the theater, having lunch with friends, doing all of that kind of stuff. And you're like, really? Like, that's all you want your life to be? Yes, literally, that is all I want my life to be. That sounds amazing.
I doubt that. It sounds amazing, but I doubt it. Look at all of the things that you have involved yourself in by choice. Your 3G group, your book club, the alumni of your thing. You're involved in a lot of things that you do not have to be involved in. And if something has to give for the few years that I was home with the children, I had to give up those things, but they were not urgent in terms of that I had to be the one doing them. Once I had more time again, I went back to doing things that filled my life in other ways.
But this might be kind of where we differ, is like, I don't know that I want to put those things on the back burner to make space for children. I feel more inclined to put children on the back burner to make space for all these things I want to do.
That's a choice. That's a choice. Now, one of the things that bothers me about your having had your tubes tied was that you can't get knocked up. Because my hope was that you would get knocked up, and then you would have to have that child, and you would have a child.
Yeah, if I got knocked up, I'd have an abortion. There's no question about that. I would not have had that child.
I don't know. You don't know either. You don't know. You know that you would have the choice, but I don't know what you would decide.
That's true. I don't know what I would actually decide in that moment, but I feel pretty confident that I was like confident enough to know that I never wanted to get pregnant, that I had my fallopian tubes removed, that I feel like I would be confident enough if I got pregnant that I do not want to be pregnant, that I would have an abortion.
Oh, that's right. I forgot who you were. I forgot you really didn't want to be pregnant.
It was never about like not having children. It was, I do not want to be pregnant. I theoretically want children, but they're coming from someone else's body.
Well, I also had the fantasy that you would get knocked up. I would tie you down for 9 months, 40 weeks, and then you would have a baby.
You'd send me away to one of those convents where I'm a prisoner until the baby comes, and then you pretend
I would just tie you down in my house.
And then you pretend it's your kid and that it was you all along, not your unwed daughter.
No. It's all yours. I already had my surprise child.
Anyway, so I was curious if you always knew that you wanted to be a mom and really knew that you wanted to be a mom.
Absolutely. I never had, and it really strikes me as strange, but I never had that travel lust that you do. I never felt the need to hop on a plane and go backpack through Europe. I had visions of, I'm going to jump out of an airplane with a parachute. I'm going to go to Hawaii. I had all these fantasies that I did not in reality make happen.
That's exactly it, just in the reverse. I have all these fantasies of having children, but that's not where my priorities are.
Well, I'm going to put it very clearly for you. If I'm dead before you have children, I won't care whether or not you have children.
Great. It's very likely that I wouldn't be able to afford to have children until you're dead anyway and I get your inheritance.
Oh, okay. I think you would be an absolutely amazing mom, but I think you would be an amazing mom to adopted children.
I think about that a lot. Does that mean you don't think I'd be an amazing mom to biological children? Would I not like my biological children?
I don't know. I don't see that clearly and that's because of the disjointed of the baby not coming out of your body. That somebody else gave birth to it. So again, it's an adopted child.
It's not. It's my child, but
right.
The different incubator.
Right. It's your DNA. But then again, half the DNA is somebody else's that we don't even know who that is. I look at all my grandchildren and half of each of them has somebody else stranger's DNA in them.
They're not strangers. They're your daughter and son-in-law.
Yeah, but they come from other places. It's a funny story. I shouldn't tell this story, but I will anyway. Before you were born, Mara and David were kids. We were making our wills, figuring out the beneficiaries. Dad was working on the wills, and then he read them to me. And I was aghast because in Mara's will, it was if something happened to Mara, that David would take care of her children. And if something happened to David, that Mara would take care of his children. And I said to Dad, are you assuming that the children's other parent would not want to keep their children? And he goes, oh, right. They're each going to have a part.
Yep.
The mindset was such that It's just us. So that had to be scrapped.
Well, yes. And I don't really think it's up to you who their kids go to. That's up to them.
God help me. Talk about being embedded in your children's lives. They were so lucky we didn't die earlier because wills would have made them crazy.
I was with some friends yesterday and we're starting a business and doing it under my LLC. So I've been looking into getting a DBA and I emailed my accountant about it and I haven't heard back. I need to follow up. And I kind of had this throwaway comment about yeah, I should probably just check with my lawyer about it too. And she was like, what a cool thing to be able to say. And I was like, I have this lawyer because my dad made me get this lawyer because he wants me to have a will. And they're like, a 32-year-old with a will? I'm like, yep, I have a will. For my one asset.
I stay out of those things.
When Dad and I were looking over the will, the very first section is just one sentence that says, unmarried with no children. And then it goes to section 2. It's such a sad little line. He's like, yeah, my heart broke when I read it. I'm like, no, I'm not saying that I'm sad about that line. I'm saying it is a sad little line. The rest of this will is the wordiest, so complex, just really giant chunks of text. And then this one little sentence was unmarried with no children.
Well, that's better than what I see on my medical record sometimes. Elderly woman, obese.
Okay, I think on that note, it's time to wrap up. I'm Sarah.
I'm Shain.
And this has been Listen to My Mother.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a positive review and subscribing to us on your favorite platform.
And if you'd like the chance to listen to my mother, head to the link in our show notes, which is currently bit.ly/listen to my submission. That's bit.ly/listen to my submission and submit your question.
No question is off limits.
And don't forget to follow our journey on Instagram at Listen to My Mother or at whatsthepoint.therapy.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Mama.
Bye, baby.